Do we need calculators, Mr. D?
Calculators are an option. You don't have to, but you can. Nick Franco, no. Jayla, no. Abby, no. Sam, no. Sophia, no. Dylan McPhee, no. There's Jayla. Morning, Jayla. Dylan, Alina. Do we know where Alina is? No? Okay. There's Abby. Okay. I'm going to get started. As people populate in, I need to stop and check them in. I'm going to share my screen. You don't need that. This is the question that we're going to be working on today. So why don't you write that down in your notebooks? Is that large enough for you? You should be able to see it. I can't see you. This is not a hard lesson at all, but I do want to make sure that for your assignment, you have the little cheat that I'm going to teach you about. Remembering that decimals are those values between whole numbers. We're going to be multiplying by decimals. We're going to be multiplying decimals by 10, 100, and 1,000, and by multiples of 10, 100, 1,000. I'm going to show you exactly what that means. We're going to start off. I'm going to make a little chart, and I'd like you to copy it down. My chart is going to have an n column. That's going to be the variable, the number that changes. I'm then going to take that variable and multiply it by 10. I'm going to take that variable, multiply it by 100. I'm going to take that variable and multiply it by 1,000. I'm just going to make a couple of columns here. I'm using a ruler. You can use a ruler. You can do it freehand, or you don't need to make columns at all, whatever works for you.
Mr. D.
Yeah.
You're frozen. I can't see what you're doing.
Hold on. There. Is that better?
No.
Your screen sharing is paused. Why? That's weird. Sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Sorry. I don't know why that happened. If you have a calculator, you can take it out and use it. You don't have anything to calculate yet, but I'm going to put some problems up here. The first variable I'm going to use is 1.2, 1 and 2/10. So that's the number that we're going to multiply by 10, 100, and 1,000.
Okay.
So if you take your calculator, I'll take mine and show you for this first one. Come on. If I multiply 1.2, let me zoom in so you can see better. Times 10. It's going to almost look like nothing happened, except you should notice something.
The decimal point is at the end.
That's correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write that answer right here. And for right now, I'm going to include that decimal point. Normally, we wouldn't have to because that's a whole number.
Don't you just keep adding zeros
What do you mean?
for every? Never mind.
Okay, so far so good. Let's do that same exact thing with 100. 1.2 times 100. Let's record that as our answer. And again, I'm going to include that decimal point. Now let's multiply 1.2 times 1,000. And I get that. Talk to me about what you see. Nick M.
Every time you go up, it like adds a zero.
So every time, do you notice that? Every zero moves the decimal place that number of spaces to the right. So when I multiplied by a 10 has 1 0. That decimal place moved 1 spot to the right. When I multiplied by 100, 100 has 2 zeros. So I take my original number and I move that decimal place 2 spots to the right. Does that make sense so far? What happens if I change that variable? What would 6/10 times 10 be? What I'm seeing is I have 1 0 in 10. So I'm going to move my decimal point from my original number 1 spot to the right. So that's going to become, I'll put that leading 0 in just so we have it. Do you see how that decimal point went 1 spot to the right?
Yes.
If I multiply 6/10 by 100, 100 has 2 zeros. So we're going to move that original decimal. I'm going to write it down. And I need to go 2 spaces to the right. There's 1.
But
What do I do?
you put a 0.
You have to add that 0 in.
But never mind.
So 6/10 times 100 is 60. We normally wouldn't put the decimal in. We normally wouldn't put the 0 in. But that's what's going on behind the scenes.
Okay.
Okay. Now, let's do that same thing. Write your original numbers down. If I move that decimal 3 spots to the right, because there's 3 zeros in 1,000, that's going to be 1, put a 0, 2, put a 0, 3, decimal point.
Okay.
Is this making sense?
For now.
It gets a teeny tiny bit harder, but not much. Let's do another one. The number that we're working with is 74 hundredths. So Alyssa, if I have 74 hundredths and I multiply by 10, what do I need to do? Oh, hold on. Do I need to unmute you? Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
It's okay. You have to move the decimal point.
How many spaces?
2,
How many zeros are in 10?
1.
1. So we're going to move it 1 space. Because we're multiplying, I'm going to write this up here. When we multiply, it means move the decimal to the right. When you multiply, you move the decimal to the right. So, what color am I using? This decimal is right here. If I move it 1 spot to the right, I'm going to write down my original digits, but I'm going to skip the decimal. You see what I did? I just copied the digits. If I move that decimal point 1 space to the right, it's going to be here. Does that make sense, Alyssa?
Yeah.
So my new answer is what?
For the next one or for this one?
For this one. What is this answer?
7.4.
Good job. Yep, we skip that 0. We forget that 0. And it's 7.4. We would read that as 7 4/10. Now, what if I took 74 hundredths times 100?
It would be 0.4 point. Or actually, no.
Take a second and think.
No, 0.74 point.
Right. You're absolutely right. And again, normally I wouldn't write that 0 and I wouldn't write that decimal point. But in our heads, that's where that is.
Okay.
And what if I multiply 74 hundredths by 1,000?
It would be 0.74.0.
No.
It would
Almost
be
there. You're almost there. I'm going to
0.
copy down my original digits,
Uh-huh.
right? That's these 3 digits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to move that decimal point. It should be here, 3 spots to the right. 1, 2. Now what? Add a 0.
And put the decimal point.
Put the decimal there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now you shift the decimal because they're in hundredths?
Correct.
Okay.
So sometimes you do not need to put a 0 in if there's enough digits in your number. Once you're moving it to the right and you run out of digits, you have to add those zeros in. Because we're multiplying by more than 1. So the number should increase in value. Let's do the next one. We're going to take that decimal and multiply it by 10, then 100, then 1,000.
Okay.
Okay. Let's pick on Selma. Selma. 352 thousandths times 10. What should I do?
0.
First thing I'm going to do is write down. I literally just copy the digits. See how the digits are exactly the same? And then I move my decimal point. How many spaces to the right am I going to move my decimal point, Selma?
3.
No. There's only 1 0 in 10. Maybe you were answering a different question. Let me ask my question again. How many spaces do I move that decimal point? That decimal point,
1.
right. That decimal point is here right now. It would be here if I had just copied it. 1 space to the right would be right there, right? Which means my answer is 3.52 or 3 52/100. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Let's do that same thing. Let's multiply 352 thousandths by 100. I'm going to copy those digits. My original decimal point is between 0 and 3. How many spaces do I need to move that decimal point?
2.
Right. So moving it once, moving it twice, that's my answer. And what would I do with the last one, Selma?
You would move the decimal point 3 spaces.
I'm going to write my digits. 3 spaces would be 1, 2, 3. Is that making sense?
Yes.
Anyone have any questions right now? Riley and Dylan, I can't see your camera. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions so far? All right, we're going to take it one step further. What were to happen here?
It's like you multiply 0.4 times 20. Like it's the same thing as 0 times 4 times 10.
Yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 10 times 0.4. But what am I going to do with that? Multiply it by 2.
By 2.
Because I've got my 2 times 10 right here. That's what that is. So now when I go and solve that, what is, let's do our parentheses first. What is 10 times 0.4? There's 1 0 in 10. So that means we're going to shift our decimal spot 1 space to the right. So 10 times 0.4 is 4.
4.
And we bring down everything else. The 2 times. What is 2 times 4?
8.
So that is my answer. Is that one making sense?
Yes.
This is a multiple of 10. Right? Multiples mean skip counting. 10, 20, 30, 40. Timothy?
Yes.
If you can do this, then you can do this. Because this problem is really this stuff times a basic fact too. Is that making sense?
Yes.
Let's try another one. I've got you 4, 5. And I mean, that's really as hard as it gets. Emma, what do you think? What do I do?
You multiply 70 times 0.9 and then
How?
you
Let's break this 70 into what?
10 times 10.
Does that make sense, Emma?
Yes.
We're going to take 70 and make it 7 times 10, because that's what 70 is, times, I'll make them X's because that's what I did up top.
Can you do another, like, I don't, never mind.
Right? This right here is the same as this. It's the same thing, right? We understand that? I broke that 70 into 7 times 10, because now what I can do is, using my associative property, I can multiply whatever I want to. Emma, what's 10 times 0.9?
90?
That, no.
9?
Yes. Do you see that?
Yes.
1 0, so we move that decimal point 1 spot over.
Oh, so because that's in tenths, that's why.
Right.
So if it was in hundreds, it would be 0.9.
Yes.
Okay.
And now I'm going to bring down everything I did not use. And what is 7 times 9?
63.
So that is your answer. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Let me give you one to try by yourself, and then we'll correct it together.
Oh, 100.
Not a big deal.
Wait, so if it's in hundreds, do you take both of the zeros?
First, you're going to split that 400 into what basic fact?
40 times 10.
No. Think again.
100 times 4.
4 times 100, or 100 times 4. Is that what you're going to say, Nick? That's what I thought.
Oh. Okay.
Sebastian, what'd you get?
120.
How?
I took 400 times 0.3 and I turned it into 100 times 0.3.
Like that?
Yep. And then I multiplied 100 times 0.3 and then I got 30.
And then?
and then I did 30 times 4, and I got 120.
Anyone else get 120 as their answer? Oh, praise Jesus. Good. Excellent. All right. So you're going to be doing a workbook page for homework, like homework, not homework, it's independent work. What I did is I'm going to put a copy of it into Google Classroom. You are allowed to use your calculators if you want to. It's probably going to be faster if you do it mentally.
Okay.
Use whatever strategy you want to. When you open up the Google Classroom assignment, I put little boxes for you to type your answers in.
So we can do it on both of them?
What do you mean both of them?
On Google Classroom and on the workbook?
You don't need to use your workbook at all. I put the workbook page into Google Classroom.
Okay.
If you want to use your workbook to do the work and then just copy it into the Google Classroom page, you can do that too.
Okay.
Mr. D?
Yeah.
Do we have to do the Google Classroom version of the math?
You must do the Google Classroom version,
Okay.
because that's how I'm going to see that you did it and whether or not you got it right and if you still need help.
Okay.
Okay?
When are you going to post it?
It's going to be in Google Classroom under classwork.
Yeah, but when?
Tomorrow.
10:30.
Yeah.
So you're going to leave this class right now, and then you're going to go to Mrs. King. When you're done with that, it will be ready and waiting for you in Google Classroom.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to end this meeting so you can hop over to Mrs. King.
Bye.
Bye, Mr.
Bye.